Unless you're speaking words of praise and encouragement and agreement, commenting on the SSPX is sort of like the inverse opposite of commenting on the Medjugorje phenomenon. The fanatics come out to play, and they play rough. This is not an enjoyable exercise, and it's my last on the Society of St. Pius X. No matter how many magisterial documents you cite, they not only disagree with them, but they have 12.5 reasons why you're hateful, you're hell-bent on thwarting heaven's plan. Both sets of supporters, SSPX and Medjugorje, show signs of Gnosticism, I believe. They alone have the secret knowledge that the rest of us muggles don't have, whether it's for the secrets and the warnings and the oddball sideshows attached to Medjugorje, or it's the reactionary and long since hardened anti-Catholic stances taken up by the SSPX. And by Catholic, I mean the Pope and bishops united with him. Both groups wrap themselves in the mantle of victimhood, if not white martyrdom. If only the Catholic Church would accept the obvious, vital truth that's hiding in plain sight, that the bishop or the evil Vatican or whatever are conniving to reject. The June 30th, 1988 Episcopal ordinations of 4 SSPX priests by founder Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre, for which they were excommunicated by Pope, now St. John Paul II, was not the first example of SSPX recalcitrance. This goes back decades. In July of 1976, Pope, now St. Paul VI, suspended Archbishop Lefebvre after a papal ban was decreed on his ordaining new priests. His response was to ignore it, as he ignored the repeated pleas and warnings from Pope John Paul II through the 1980s, leading up to the very day of the illicit ordinations in 1988. Let's be clear, the Society of St. Pius X and their apologists deny that any excommunications happened at all. Perfect. They cite successfully defended doctorates from Rome on the question. They say it's an English translation problem on the Vatican website, etc., etc. They have an answer for everything. Just one more layer of similarity to the Medjugorje movement. The following is one of the several references to the lack of canonical status mentioned by Pope Benedict XVI in his March 10, 2009 lifting of the excommunications. Again, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to assume that my opinion is worthless and to pay attention to the documents themselves, because that's where the truth lies. Every document I cite in this video, you can click on the link below and read for yourself. In 2009, Pope Benedict wrote, quote, "As long as the society does not have a canonical status in the Church, its ministers do not exercise legitimate ministry in the Church," unquote. And, quote, "In order to make this clear once again, until the doctrinal questions are clarified, the society has no canonical status in the Church, and its ministers, even though they have been freed of the ecclesiastical penalty, do not legitimately exercise any ministry in the Church," unquote. Now, Pope Francis, as a gesture of mercy for the Year of Mercy, provided an indult so that SSPX priests could hear confessions that year. And when the clock ran down to 0 on the Year of Mercy, the Pope decided to extend this indult in an apostolic letter, Misericordia et Misera, in November of 2016. Quote, "For the pastoral benefit of these faithful, and trusting in the goodwill of their priests to strive with God's help for the recovery of full communion in the Catholic Church, I've personally decided to extend this faculty beyond the Jubilee year until further provisions are made, lest anyone ever be deprived of the sacramental sign of reconciliation through the Church's pardon," unquote. The Society of St. Pius X are not in full communion with the Catholic Church, therefore. The former head of the Society is one of the 4 bishops ordained illicitly in 1988, Bishop Bernard Follet. During a talk on October 12, 2013 at an Angelus Press conference in Kansas City, he said, quote, "I told them," the negotiation reps of the Holy See, "from the start in September the previous year that we cannot accept this hermeneutic of continuity because it's not true. It's not real. It is against the reality. So we do not accept it. The Council is not in continuity with tradition. It's not." So when Benedict requested that we accept the Second Vatican Council as an integral part of tradition, we say, sorry, that's not the reality, so we're not going to sign it. We're not going to recognize that, unquote. He goes on, the same for the Mass. They want us to recognize not only that the new Mass is valid, provided it's celebrated correctly, etc., but that it's licit. I told them, we don't use that word. It's a bit messy. our faithful have enough confusion regarding the validity, so we tell them the new Mass is bad, it is evil, and they understand that. Period. Of course, the Roman authorities were not very happy with that, unquote. Does this sound like someone who wants to be Catholic? The SSPX YouTube channel features all kinds of bizarre and dangerous advice, like the strong recommendation to not go to the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass if it's the ordinary form, the Novus Ordo monstrosity, and stay home and self-quarantine with your family by saying the Rosary, reading the Old Rite Lectionary, or making a spiritual communion. Again, watch the clip below for yourself. Make up your own mind. Urging Catholics to commit mortal sin by deliberately not going to Mass on Sunday is much worse than stupid. It's evil. According to the anti-Vatican II website Tradition in Action, on April 12, 1979, a former Dominican scholar called Father Gerard de Laurier wrote to a group of trad supporters saying that Archbishop Lefebvre had quietly said the Novus Ordo for 2 years after its implementation in 1970, causing quite a scandal, as you can imagine. Gerard de Laurier later became a sede privationist, like a sede vacantist, but not quite, who was illicitly ordained a bishop by a Vietnamese sedevacantist bishop, and he spent the rest of his 90 years doing battle against the sedevacantists. That's a whole other kettle of fish. Now, SSPX sympathizers love calling people liars. I've linked that letter below. I'll leave it to your discernment whether Tradition in Action editor Attila Cinque Guimarães is a liar. Finally, the explosive Spotlight report produced and hosted by Christine Niles over at Church Militant has sparked unbelievable levels of venom from SSPX fans. But one missing detail here in their reactions. No refutations, just charges of hatred and vendetta and lies. You can click the link below to watch that painstakingly researched report by Christine Niles. Now, some of this is brand new, disturbing information, and some of it was already exposed 3 years ago by a Swedish television program called Uppdrag Granskning. That report centered on 3 SSPX priests and 1 seminarian who's now doing a life sentence for multiple child rape. The Swedish program alleged 12 minor victims over 3 decades in France, Germany, Australia, Ireland, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Same MO as the Legionaries of Christ. Same MO as the defenders of Uncle Ted the Molester. Deny, deflect, attack, cover up, rinse, and repeat. Ironically, the saint they're named for had their number back in 1909 in the encyclical Communium Rerum when he wrote, "They err greatly, therefore, who lose faith during the storm, wishing for themselves and the Church a permanent state of perfect tranquility, universal prosperity, and practical, unanimous, and uncontested recognition of her sacred authority." Unquote. You see, one effect of the devastating Spotlight report by Christine Niles is that the SSPX can no longer claim to be the special remnant of true Catholics who were untainted by the corruptions of the conciliar church and uniquely positioned to save the church. You think I'm exaggerating? On the SSPX website, you can read the following by its founder, referring to a kind of dream he had in Dakar, Africa in 1958. Quote, "Did I save the Catholic priesthood, the Catholic Mass, and the Catholic faith? Certain people attribute these wonderful things to me, but you see, I am for nothing in this." Unquote. Archbishop Lefebvre wrote those words. Then why, Archbishop, did you bring up the fawning things said to you? With respect, this sounds a little bit like the Dickens character Uriah Heep, who assured people he was humble, so very humble. That claim of moral and ecclesiastical superiority is dead forever. Like the broader church they spend day and night criticizing, the SSPX is also run by sinners who ignored victims and covered up crimes. Watch Christine's report in the link below and make up your own mind. Thanks be to God, more victims have come forth privately since it was released this week, and I expect more to come. And I pray they all find their way, all the way back home into the Catholic Church. I say all of this as someone who loves the extraordinary form of the Mass, someone who wishes that every Catholic would at least learn rudimentary Latin, and who sympathizes with many of the complaints registered by traditionalists, including by some in the SSPX. But the fact is, the SSPX mentality is a gateway drug to sedevacantism, and good people are being sucked in. The SSPX, of course, had some radicals in their ranks who thought that Marcel Lefebvre was too liberal and a compromiser. In 1983, after Lefebvre expelled 4 priests, Father Clarence Kelly, Father now Bishop Daniel Dolan, Father Anthony Cicada, and Father Eugene Barry, the breakaway group called themselves the SSPV, Unreconstructed Sedevacantists, who believed that the last legitimate pope was Pius XII, who died in 1958. When SSPX Bishop Richard Williamson got the Golden Boot Award by Bishop Fillet for disobedience in 2012, he started his own sour lemon stand called The Resistance, and is the patron of a tiny group of far-right radtrads called the St. Marcel Initiative. As it turns out, Williamson's views on the Holocaust were on full display during a TV interview on the same station in Sweden that exposed the SSPX in 2017, and that led to the profound embarrassment of Pope Benedict XVI, who was accused of rehabilitating a complete nutbar. This is another reason the 2009 lifting of the excommunications was, in my opinion, a mistake. Every gesture, every accommodation toward unity made by the Holy See, toward full communion, they reject. They oppose the Second Vatican Council, especially the document on religious freedom. They completely reject the Novus Ordo Mass. They don't want to be Catholic. Like Father Martin Luther before them, they know better. One option open to the Holy See is to suppress the society. Shut them down. Let them go their own way. Let's say goodbye to 40 years plus of endless polemical wars. One blessing of shutting them down is that they'd have to stop using their fight against the big bad Catholic Church for fundraising purposes. There's a name for all this splinterization and going your own way. It's called Protestantism. Nothing justifies breaking communion with Peter and Jesus. Peter, the rock that does not roll. Jesus, the divine Son of God. Subscribe to this channel. Check out coffinnation.com, the largest community of culture restorers. We have more fun than canon law permits. Coffinnation.com is a link. In the meantime, be a saint. What else is there?